This one's gonna make some enemies. Okay. You've read the title, I'm not going to waste your time with an intro. So, should Splatoon 4 be free to play? Well, before we start weighing the advantages and disadvantages, we need to ask ourselves another question first. That being, what do we want out of Splatoon 4? What are you looking for in this game? This is important to ask because I can make as many arguments for and against free to play Splatoon as I want, but if for whatever reason you have this burning desire to spend £50 on a Splatoon game, there is no way I could convince you to accept a free to play Splatoon. Same in reverse, if you have no money to your name, why would you ever want Splatoon to be pay to play, since there would be no way for you to experience this masterpiece of a series? Your answer to these questions is very personal. Not everyone wants the same thing, and I can't account for every single need or want. This isn't about convincing you one way or another, but it's supposed to be just an interesting think piece, because why not? It's fun. It's not like the people devising Splatoon's monetary strategy will be watching this anyways. To make things clear, I am both a content creator and a competitive player. These will inform my interests and what I want out of the game, as you will no doubt see going forward. With all the housekeeping out of the way though, let's actually talk about this. The first and most obvious advantage of Splatoon being free to play is that it's free to play. There is, by nature of its pricing, a lower barrier to entry, which is never going to be a bad thing for players. Before, if you wanted to play Splatoon, you needed not only to buy a Switch, not only did you need a Nintendo Switch Online subscription, you also needed to pay £50 upfront cost, which to some might just be a bit too much. Remove the upfront cost, and that's just more people who are willing to buy. There are less barriers to entry. As a creator, more players is always going to be good for me. More people playing Splatoon means more people watch my videos, which means more money in my pocket. Well, my bank account. I mean, it's not that much money, mind you, but more views also means I could have a bigger ego. Again, as a competitive player, more people playing the game is even better for me. A lot of these players would be new players, so I wouldn't be seeing any new faces in my tournament games for quite a while, but that doesn't matter. I care more that the community grows. You don't need to be a top 500 player to be a competitive player. All you need is a copy of Splatoon and the time to play it. With a free-to-play Splatoon, there will be a lot more people who will fit those requirements. A larger player count might also fix some issues that you might not have even considered in the first place. Splatoon's matchmaking is infamous for being terrible. Splatoon uses a form of skill-based matchmaking to ensure that some of the best players in the world don't have to play against little Timmies hopping on ranked for the first time. It's supposed to do that, at least. It attempts to make it fair and ensure both players can have a fun experience. Thing is, Splatoon tends to play a bit loose with skill-based matchmaking in an effort to prioritize fast matchmaking over quality matchmaking. To give an example, back when I played ranked back in Splatoon 2, I would tend to hover around 2500 to 2600 X power. But in the game's efforts to find me a game in under 5 minutes, the game would find me lobbies where the mean power was 2100-ish. What this means is that the 7 players in the lobby likely had a power between 2000 and 2100. This is not good matchmaking. To put this into perspective, Splatoon's X power is based on the Glico 2 system, a modification of the ELO system for chess. An ELO 2500 would be enough for FIDE to grant you the title of Grandmaster, the highest title they can give you. Yes, I am showing off. An ELO of 2100, however, wouldn't even be enough for the lowest title of FIDE Candidate Master. Put a 2500 against a 2100 in chess and it would be a clean sweep. Same thing applies to Splatoon. This matchmaking issue has caused a lot of the issues X-Rank has become known for in the West. High-ranking players gaining 0.1 a win but losing 70 a loss. That's because of this. Splatoon 3 attempted to fix this in ways that made it feel better, but also ways that cheapened the system and just never actually fixed the underlying issue. They added a ticket system that allowed players to guarantee points if they won 3 games per ticket. A good way to avoid the minus 70 losses, but also a really good way to artificially inflate power. Back in the day, only a handful of people were skilled enough to achieve 3000 XP. Nowadays, you need it to get top 500 in Japan Splat Zones. So how would a larger player base help this issue? Well, a lot of these issues stem from the fact that Splatoon's matchmaking is trying to prioritize speed over quality. It has to make concessions to find your game in under 5 minutes. The more players there are though, the more likely it is that there will be players with an ELO similar to yours, which will generally lead to high quality matchmaking. Additionally, with that increased likelihood, the devs might be a bit more willing to prioritize high quality games over speed. With an increased player count, this would impact the lower ranks pretty much immediately, but this will also impact the higher ranks with enough time, making it a benefit for everyone. Another benefit to the free-to-play model is one of incentives. This is also one of the downsides, and I'll get to that later, but I'm going to talk about the positive incentives first, because it is what got me wanting to make this video in the first place. The thing about the free-to-play, and by extension live service model, is that it is one that promotes longevity, or more so, pay-to-play doesn't. So I don't know about you, but it seems pretty obvious to me that Splatoon is trying to be this live service game. They want Splatoon to be this game that you log into every day to play some matches. There are a lot of systems in place that incentivize that way of interacting with the game. The Battle Pass system giving you something you can progress towards, rewards, first run of the day, of course incentivizes playing every day, salmon runs bonuses, making you want to play every rotation, stamps for challenge mode, even systems that have been there since day one have been designed with live service in mind. Well, no, the systems in day one were mostly there to hide the fact that they had basically no content, it was an unfinished game, but the shops rotate every single day. The rotation system tries to ensure that every time you log on, you have a unique experience. They even use classic FOMO to keep you coming back. There are of course challenges which only happen at set times of the day, something they used to do with Salmon Run back in the day. Big Run and Extra Work only happen on certain weekends, and have their own special rewards. Splatfest is the oldest of these, and is usually the only way you can access the valuable resource of Super Sea Snails. Splatoon is clearly trying to be a live service game. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. I am a long-time player and content creator, so I am very much invested in the long-term health of whatever the current Splatoon game is, so I'm fine with them doing this. The issue I have then is that Nintendo isn't invested in the long-term health of the game, thanks in part to their monetization strategy. The pay-to-play model is pretty simple. You hand over a certain amount of money now, and in return you get the game for the rest of your life, unless you lose it or break it, or it was somehow designed to not last in the first place. This model makes perfect sense, and is the best model for the vast majority of video games. If you want to play the masterpiece, that is Bakugan Battle Brawlers for Nintendo DS, all I gotta do is find a copy of it for sale, give whoever is selling it money, and that's it. That game is mine. I can play through it whenever I want, at whatever pace I want. In fact, I did that back in 2016 in a 3-for-2 sale in the now dying games retailer Game in the UK. And I still have the copy. If I wanted to, I could re-experience this masterpiece right now. But there is one masterpiece that I can't experience again despite having bought the game back in 2016. I can't just play my copy of Splatoon 1 anymore. If I wanted to relive my glory days as an S+99 E-liter and Bento Splatterscope, oh my god, I've changed. I just can't. Not because the queues are dead, but because there are no queues in the first place. Online support for Splatoon 1 is gone. The game that I paid full price for is just gone. Because while Splatoon was designed to be a live service game, it is at odds with the incentives that the pay-to-play model creates. Because this is a model that front-loads profits. What I mean by this is that on release week, you will make a lot of money. Splatoon 3, for example, sold 3.45 million copies in its first 3 days, which actually made it the fastest selling game on the Switch in Japan. 6 months after release, that number had tripled to about 10.67 million copies. But in the following year, Splatoon 3 would only sell another 1.3 million, leaving its total sales at 11.96 million. The first 6 months sold just over 8 times better than the following year, and that following year included the release of Side Order. Since your revenue is directly tied to sales, this creates a certain incentive system, one that's based around generating as much hype around the game on its release, maybe continuing support for a few months after release, but eventually they'll want to stop, since there is little financial incentive to supporting the game after release. Updates like new seasons with new weapons or new maps don't really do much to drive up sales. They only serve to keep players who already own the game interested, but these players do not generate any more profit. I believe this played a role in why Splatoon 3 was promised 2 years worth of updates, and why every single one of them felt so underwhelming. 2 years of updates is just so that you don't feel bad about buying an unfinished game on release, and they felt underwhelming because without strong financial incentive, what reason does Nintendo, the company Nintendo, have to do beyond the bare minimum? You've already bought the game. If done well, and I want to stress the if done well part, because again I'll talk about this later, if done well, a free-to-play Splatoon that allows players to make in-game purchases will be one that promotes longevity, because profits are no longer tied to sales and are instead correlated to general interest. There'll be a reason for the updates and seasons to be less underwhelming and just more whelming, I suppose. This will likely have an impact on balance patches as well. Boring and stagnant metas tend to lower interest, and so there is an incentive to frequently balance the game. Ensure things like Azuka and Pencil don't dominate the meta for a year and a half, and creating periods where different weapons will have their time to shine. Okay, those are the first 2 positives that come to mind, but in talking about them, I've been very careful to dance around the negatives. One of the big hurdles that you will need to overcome if Splatoon were to be free to play is the issue of monetization. What would be the things that you pay for, and what would stay free? The system a lot of free to play games tend to fall down when it comes to monetization is the same system we have in real life. Money buys power. This is a system that has been shown to work. Every PvE gacha game, like a lot of Mario games, are proof of this. I mean, who doesn't want to be powerful? Unfortunately, a system like this just won't work for a PvP game like Splatoon, since from what small amount of research I've done, you can expect about 20 to 30% of your initial player base to be paying players. Players who can't afford to buy all the strong things will not enjoy the game, and if they're not enjoying the game, they won't play. You'll find that community will massively shrink, which isn't great if you want your game to stay alive. In PvP games, the other players are the content. Reduce the community, there's less content. If you can't sell power then, the other tried and true method would be to sell style. cosmetics. This method has been shown to work especially well for PvP games. Back in the day, League of Legends received a bunch of praise for being entirely free to play but still allowing players to buy skins, should they choose to. Meaning you could be a free to play player and lose out on nothing gameplay wise. But this would be difficult to do with Splatoon because we have the gear system. Right? Pretty much since Splatoon 1, like 10 years ago, your gear choices has been your main form of customization. The gear choices you make and how you dress up your Inkling is a core part of the experience for a lot of different people, and so locking this behind a paywall just doesn't feel right. This is especially true since this could also creep into the pay-to-win territory. Abilities are attached to gear, and abilities are just straight stat increases in most cases. People with more money to spend will have access to higher rarity gear, which makes it a lot easier for them to make good gear sets with lots of good abilities. Not necessarily impossible for free-to-play players to catch up, but just, again, we just don't want to be selling power. While that is a common concern I see, no one said gear itself had to be the cosmetics that we were sold. Trousers, hairstyle, eye colour are all forms of customization that can be paid and don't impact the gear system. There is the option to leave the gear system as is and have paid options be designed. You could transmogrify over your normal gear. While none of them are perfect, there are a lot of ways to add customization without impacting what we have already. Another idea for cosmetics would be weapon skins. This is something we kind of already have and have had since the first game. We've attached weapon skins to paid DLC. Hero Roller and Hero Charge in Splatoon 1, Octoshot in Splatoon 2, Order Weapons in Splatoon 3, as well as Octoshot in Splatoon 3. And I think that's a pretty good idea. While paid weapon skins have existed in the past, they've always been tied to very specific kits. Octoshot has always been a 10 to tech Splattershot, for example, which did limit when and where you could use that skin, as well as what gear you could make to match it. Weapon skins might be difficult to implement because of the attachment to kits, but no one said you have to do it like this. They could just let you equip weapon skins to any kit if they want to, or do away with the kit system entirely. But it's just that we don't have the precedent for this, so I don't know if it's something that Nintendo will be willing to do. But if they do it, I will be buying all the Inkbrush skins immediately. There is nothing that says hero mode has to go, but it does seem pretty likely to me that it might not be included in the base game. It might be that adding single player might make players more inclined to buy all the multiplayer stuff, but I personally don't see that happening. It seems likely to me that if we were to do a single player campaign, they would have to be paid, which I can't see as anything other than a downside, since less Splatoon players get to experience hero mode. A similar thing might apply to Salmon Run and Table Turf. Again, there is no rule that says that if Splatoon becomes free to play, these modes need to disappear, but if they can't find a way to monetize them, why would they keep them around? Maybe Table Turf packs become purchasable. That would open up monetization, but would also exclude a lot of players from that mode of play. Salmon Run maybe doesn't have the exact same issue. You could probably use your weapon skins and specially purchased hairstyles, which could save it. Maybe they add a special paid slop suits or something, and yeah, these can work, but they're not very elegant solutions. That might end up splitting up the PvP and PvE players. All of this to say that while, yeah, you can make a free-to-play Splatoon, that likely isn't an elegant solution that doesn't take away from what we already have when it comes to monetization. But my main concern when it comes to free-to-play Splatoon is not one of practicality, but one of morality. The free-to-play model is one that's become more and more common over the years, and with good reason. It is a model that allows players to pay as little or as much as they'd like. Great for people that don't have much money to spend, but even better for the developers because it gives them an even higher theoretical earnings. When you buy a game the traditional way, let's say you were to buy Bakugan Battle Ballers for the DS, the amount of revenue the developers could get from you is limited to the price of the game, unless you're like me and you get it second hand, in which case they get nothing. But in a free-to-play game, sure, it's possible for someone to spend absolutely nothing, but it's also possible for someone to pay multiple times the normal retail price of the game. It's even possible to have people, often called whales, to pay tens, if not hundreds of times the normal retail price. When making a free-to-play game, the type of customer the developers are envisioning are not the free or low-paying players. They are thinking about whales and how much money they can bring in. A lot of companies will happily let 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of their players be completely free-to-play if it means they can extract thousands from the remaining. In an ideal world, the whales will be the people that can easily afford it. People with more money than they know what to do with. That way, sure, they're spending lots of money, but at least it's money they have. But we don't live in an ideal world. The whales aren't the people with the most money to spend, they are the people willing to spend the most money, even if it's money they don't have. A good example of how they do this would be gacha games. Two that come to mind would be Genshin Impac, and Zenless Zone Zero. Two of my favourite games. These are games with really engaging combat system, deep and interesting lore, fun and relatable characters, but at their core, they are built around a predatory gambling system. Video game companies have never and will never have your best interests at heart. They are companies driven by profit, always have been and always will be. And if the most profitable course of action is to take advantage of someone's predisposition to gambling addiction and ruin their life, they will happily do that. And Nintendo is no exception. It doesn't have to be this way. Free-to-play can be done without taking advantage of people. Back in the day, League of Legends was praised for its free-to-play model. Anything and everything you could pay for, you could also earn by playing the game. Even skins. The premium cosmetics you could earn on a completely free-to-play account. You had a bit less control over what you got, but even the most expensive options were still attainable. Not only that, but if you want to spend money, it was reasonably priced. If you wanted a certain skin for your favourite character, you'd only need to drop a $5, maybe a $10 on the game to get it. They were very transparent about what you were getting and the prices felt fair, that you knew that they weren't going to extort you, and that allowed Riot Games to build a lot of goodwill with their player base. So free-to-play can be fine if they do it right. Right? Well, maybe, but maybe the free-to-play model is doomed from the start. Remember how I said League of Legends was originally praised for its monetization system? I mean, you should, it was like 15 seconds ago. Well, in recent months, this praise has turned more into critique. In June of last year, Riot released Immortalized Legend Ahri, a skin dedicated to some pretty good League of Legends player or something, and because this was a super special skin, it had an increased price point, obviously. For some of the most expensive skins, you could normally expect to pay something like $25 to $40, which is a lot, but they were a luxury good, so it felt fair. If you wanted Immortalized Legend Ahri, and you wanted the full skin with all the cool animations and extra little features, and wanted the portrait signed by this somewhat good League of Legends player, you were looking at spending $500. An absolutely insane amount, more than a Nintendo Switch 2. This is a skin very clearly targeted at whales, but at the very least it was done in a way that isn't going to rope in many low spenders. There was a version of the skin that you could get for cheaper, at $40, and if you were a low spender and wanted to own all the Ahri skins, you'd feel bad that you couldn't get the full complete version with all the cool effects, but at least you're given a cheaper option. But the story doesn't end there, because in December of last year, they would add a new type of skin. An exalted skin. So what is an exalted skin, you may or may not be asking? Well, skins in League of Legends come in different rarities, with the highest rarities before exalted being ultimate skins. Ultimate skins will come with a lot of special features and animations. They'd even sometimes play music, but they'd of course come at a higher price of about $25. Exalted skins are, in practice, not that much different to ultimate skins, with their main difference being how you acquire them. So how do you acquire them? Oh great, we're back at gambling again. Yeah, it's gambling. They use a gacha system, very similar to Genshin Impac.
Genshin Impac.
And while you can guarantee an exalted skin within a certain amount of tries, it can cost up to $250 to get that guarantee. So now, not only adding a system that is very clearly targeted at whales, they're adding an element of gambling to it as well, just to make it that extra little bit exploitative. Now it's not just about the people who have the money to spend, but just the people who are willing, regardless of whether or not they have it. Now, they're cashing in their goodwill to pursue greater profits. So should Splatoon be free to play? I don't know, to be honest. I think that if it's done right, it comes with a lot of benefits. It can help push the developers into making a game that is designed to last, as well as a game that can cultivate a large community around itself. Splatoon managed to do that without being free to play. Imagine what it could do if it was. However, a free-to-play Splatoon is one that is difficult to get right, and even if it is done right, there is no guarantee that it will not later fall in the pursuit of profit. Did I seriously just make a Splatoon video into like a capitalism bad video? Is that what I've just done? God, I can't tell if I should be worried or proud.